Hi, this is a Pika Part 2 video on the construction details, and I wanted to apologize for the audio at the beginning is very low. You'll probably need to turn your volume up, and it's also out of sync with the video later on, so I apologize for that. I'm still learning. Thanks for your patience. Hope you enjoy. Hi guys, I did a quick intro video to Pika recently, and I wanted to go over more of the construction details on Pika. So starting with the outside, one of the most important things that I've learned from building is how essential it is to get the water off of the building as quickly as possible. Any place there's water that's hanging out on a flat surface, that's where the rot starts, that's where the problems start. So on Pika, there's no place where the water hangs out at all. Everything is sloped down, is pitched down. On the skylight, it's all curved on the top. There's no rim around the outside where water can hang out. It's all directed off and down. Same thing on the trim. This trim is curved all the way around. And one additional thing that I did is the bottom of the siding here, the sheathing, is beveled down this way too. So water runs down the side and then it drips right off. Because even if the siding or there's a board that's flat on the bottom, water will run down and bead up on the bottom and soak in, and I've seen many places where that's caused rot in buildings prematurely. I did these windows a little differently than typically in construction. I omitted the Z-flashing because that's something that I've seen that cause a lot more problems than help. It's another layer of weakness. It's another joint in the system that needs to be sealed. Metal expands and contracts a lot with heat, and I've just seen where water's been able to wick up behind it and cause problems. So what I did on these windows was I used a really high quality elastic caulk, and I just prepped everything really well. I primed the siding and then put a really generous bead of this elastomeric caulk in there, and I try to avoid chemicals like that, but there are a few places where I think they make sense, and this was a really good one. And I wiped everything down with alcohol before I applied it, so everything was perfectly clean. There's a generous radius bead here, and the thing about this is it's really easy to inspect. If it ever breaks away, I'll be able to see it, and just simple, regular visual inspections will help me to head off any problems before they develop further. And so far, again, it's been a year now that this has been out through a very cold, one of the coldest, wettest winters in recent Oregon history, and a very hot summer, and everything's performing fantastically. It still basically looks new, so I'm really pleased about that. I wanted to talk also about the canvas. This is, like I mentioned in the last video, it's a traditional boat material, boat decking and cabin top covering material. And the way that I did it is it's set in glue. And there is an article in Wooden Boat magazine from maybe 8 or 10 years ago, and I can't remember the author's name, but he describes going through the whole process of using Type-On 2 and gluing it down onto a plywood substrate, and then you spritz it with water and you iron it, and then you brush glue on and then sand it and paint it. And basically it provides an extra layer of a mesh, a grid, like a crack isolation membrane you'd use under tile. It's the same kind of thing, but it allows for a very generous coat of paint that is flexible and can move as the plywood moves under it. All that can flex, but the seal will remain intact. This was some reclaimed, I think it's Ipe or a Kumaru from a deck job I did years ago. And these are some strips that I steam bent, and I used Pika as the mold, so I steamed them in a big PVC pipe and then bent them over the top of Pika, and then bent them in place here, bedded them in a quality caulk, screwed them in, and this covers the edge of the canvas. The exterior, the siding, is actually also the sheathing. I was inspired to try this after seeing dog houses and cat houses that get painted and once and left out in the rain, and they last for a long time, many years, and they're still basically okay. But what I did is I really took a lot of extra pain to seal everything really well. So I used an oil-based primer because it's just so much better for the kind of exposure that this has. So an oil-based primer, and then high-quality acrylic latex top coat.
Let me try that again. Coughing. Let's just get rid of that one. Hi, welcome inside. So I wanted to talk about this little cabinet that I built. Is extra narrow, but it fits the space better, but it's enough to still prep on, cook on, whatever you need to do. And most of the wood in here is reclaimed. These drawers, this was fun to figure these handles out. This actually is from an ash tree that blew down just a couple 100 feet from where I was building Pika. I just went out one day with a saw and cut some of the ash branches up and scraped the bark, and I used a water-based urethane on these to keep the nice bright look of them. These ends, this is kind of fun joinery right here to dovetail these in so they're nice and strong. And I like these poles a lot. I like the functionality of these. And I did these two handles this way because there's not an oven, which is where you always put your hand towel, over the handle of the oven. So I don't have that, so I basically created that here so that hand towels can be hung here and drying out. The little copper faucet that you can't see. The little copper faucet right here, this is fun because it's a reclaimed supply line from some of the sinks in the dorm that's right out through the window here. And we were pulling out sinks one day, and I just grabbed one of these and pulled it out, cleaned it up, and connected it to the water lines to my little water system, and that works great. And the sink's a half-size hotel pan, 6 inches deep. And I just bought this drain assembly, and you can kind of see I actually I drilled a hole in it, and then I pounded this down around here so that this drain assembly will sit flush with the bottom, so it doesn't sit proud, so the water actually drains out. The countertop is just finished with a food grade mineral oil, so it can be used as an integral cutting board, which I like. It's just one of those things that just requires a little bit of maintenance and then works out really well, and I like the way that it ages. So when I wanted to put the sink in, I wanted to set it in silicone, which is typical. But of course the silicone wouldn't adhere very well to wood that's impregnated with mineral oil. So what I did was I put the sink in and I masked the countertop off before I put any oil on it. And then I took it out and I actually polyurethaned around where the sink was going to go. I put a few layers of polyurethane down, sealed the wood really well, let that dry, and then I siliconed the hotel pan, the sink in, weighed it down with some tools I think that I had laying around, and then I pulled the tape up after it was dry, and then I oiled all the rest of it, and it worked out great. And it's still sealed everywhere, and it's holding tight, and then the countertop is great, can be used as a cutting board, and you don't really see the edge of the polyurethane or the silicone unless you look for it. So that worked out really well. And these little shelf brackets were from that same ash tree that came down, and these are what we call in boat building grown crooks, where there's a branch and the trunk, and basically the grain of the wood follows that curve. So you cut this out, and then you've got a very strong piece of wood. And it's very beautiful and functional, and you don't lose the space that you would if you had a strut coming up here. And it's just so much more attractive than, you can get like the metal shelf brackets that are shaped like that, but this is just a lot more fun. And this is just the right space for my little dish rack that goes up here. Wall paneling is 1/4 inch material. It's actually like tile underlayment. And I was trying to figure out how I wanted to fasten it. I wanted it to be very secure, and it's hard to accomplish that in such a thin material. And I wanted it to, I wanted the fasteners to disappear, and I realized that just wasn't going to be possible. So I opted to get these little brass screws instead, and I think they're really nice. That you don't really notice them, but then when you do see them, they're pleasant to look at. This curtain rod's a fun little detail. Just a little dowel that I had laying around, but I had to make these little feet to bring them up to the right distance from the trim. It was really fun trimming out these windows, and when I did this stool inside, this is some nice reclaimed fur that I've got. And so frequently in people that haven't done a lot of work with curves, people that do a lot of rectilinear building, what they do is like you'd bend a little batten, a little thin piece of wood around this to this arc that you want, and draw a line and cut it out with a jigsaw, hit it with the sander, router. You can make it look pretty good, but I got to use one of my favorite tools. It's the compass plane, and it's a wood plane, and the sole plate is a piece of spring steel, and there's a clever little contraption that as you turn the wheel, which is actually the tote, it bends the sole up and down to conform to a wide range of arcs. And so I set it for this arc and then plane it one way and plane it the other way because of the grain. And then you end up with this beautiful arc, and that kind of thing is just so satisfying for me, when just to look along that and just see this perfectly fair arc on these windowsills. And I actually screwed these down into the framing. Frequently these would be just a few finish nails, but I actually put some screws in, and then I plugged them, and so it's really beautiful, I think, and it's very strong too. I mean, I can shake the whole building just by shaking the windowsill. And I had it a little deeper, had it brought out a little deeper. The walls are thin, so if it didn't come out, there wouldn't be a lot of useful space, and it's nice to have little spaces to put things on a tiny house like this. These curtains, I got this really fun material from, I think it's Center Diamond in Cannon Beach, Oregon. I was out there, and always have fun. They've got some beautiful fabric, and I picked this up, and I wanted to match this. This is reclaimed window trim that I used. I wanted bright colors in Pika that would be nourishing, that would be stimulating in an uplifted way, enriching, enlivening, but not overwhelming, not chaos-inducing. And so I found this green that I really love, and then I found these fun curtains that go along with the green, and also kind of pick up the this yellow color that I've got inside. On my little drop leaf table, I did this custom joinery, made this support from the same wood that goes under. And there's just a couple standard butt hinges right there, and you can see that nice joinery, and it was fun to make this piece in this arc to give myself a little more leg room down below. Just wanted to show some of the joinery on the rack in the quote-unquote mud room. This was fun to figure this out, how that could all go together, dovetailed into that. That's a reclaimed closet rod. And then this other end is actually just pocket screwed into a block behind the wall panel there. One thing that I love about Pika is this threshold, actually. Because when I sweep, something that drives me crazy is when I'm sweeping all the debris and then I can't get it past something. And you notice that this is beveled all the way down to the floor, and even around on the ends too, so nothing can get trapped, and I can sweep everything right out. It's so satisfying. And that's it. I'm telling you, it really works. Like, really works. Best part of all Pika is for sale because I want to share Pika and I want to fund more projects. I want to build more tiny homes and teach tiny home building. And to jumpstart that process, I want to sell Pika. I'd love to use that capital to keep moving forward and doing bigger projects and sharing the knowledge and doing more videos. So if you're interested in Pika, I'm asking for $6,000 and give me a shout. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.